Hello my friends and welcome back to Absurdia. Today we are continuing our look at the basic Absurdian timeline as it would have been taught in your typical school found anywhere in the world. Last video we spoke about the massive war between the gods that shaped Absurdia. So if you haven't seen that video, go back and come back to watch this one then. Following the events of this great war, the entire landscape had now been created, so the gods now had to create something to inhabit it. And so the first mortal creature to be created were humans. Humans were basically used as the base template of all of the other races. You got a human, but you want to make it prettier? Elf. You want a human, but make it shorter? Dwarf. You want a human, but make it a furry? Tabaxi. There were, of course, other things created, but this is just to explain where the mortal races came from. For the next few thousand years, Absurdia would be in a very primitive and primal state. This is mostly inspired by D&D's Plain-Gia setting. I basically want you to imagine D&D but in the Ice Age or the Stone Age. Like magic cavemen. During this time in which the mortal races were still coming into their own and learning to conquer the world, this is also when the gods still walked the earth. And as such, the gods were still creating the world as the mortals were already inhabiting it. All the while still teaching them how to survive in this world, giving them the gift of language, of technology. Again, there's a lot of stories that I would love to cover about this time period, such as the god of the sun and the god of the moon and how they got those roles. And I'd really like to talk about the story of how Bjornfrid, the god of war, eventually also became the god of winter. But as the mortal races were still learning to live off the land, and as the gods were still trying to figure out their place in creation, well, Etheria's siblings finally found her little piece of the cosmos. And in trying to intrude upon it, they manifested in the form of giant titans. Now, it's a huge mystery in-world as to how exactly these titans found Absurdia. Some people say that it was mortals who had summoned them. In an effort to become more godlike, to obtain more power, to just figure out where are we, what is our place in this world, nobody knows. All that is certain is that when the Titans came, there was yet again a massive conflict. Once again, the gods would have to fight for their creation and protect their children. And so we can still see the outcome of this conflict through all of the massive swords and skulls that are scattered all throughout Absurdia. Specifically with the rotting remains of the Titans littered all across Eldavik, as well as the great island of the fallen Titan, but more on that another time. It was after this massive conflict that the gods had to make a decision. Like I said before, there were theories that it was mortals who had invited these Titans into our world in an attempt to obtain godhood. And so the gods realized that their creation was becoming way too dependent on them. The gods ruled as kings. They didn't want that. They wanted to be these loving celestial parents. Or at least the good ones did. And so they realized that their presence on the material plane would ultimately just lead to some mortals either wanting to obtain godhood themselves, or learning to never be reliant on themselves either. And so it was decided that all of the deities would leave the material plane and instead leave mortal kind to make its own way in the world. Unfortunately, mortal kind now had a new threat to deal with. But more on that another time. Stay tuned because next we will be covering the Great War of Dominion. Stay tuned, my friends!